Okay, let's get going. So again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is the second webinar of nearly a year-long webinar series with the transitions. I am Rachel Fikes with Rising Medical Solutions, and I am the Chief Experience Officer, and I also lead our annual workers' compensation benchmarking study. So I will be the moderator for this session. And we're going to be digging into some of the study findings about, how we're currently addressing the talent crisis and really how we can pivot as an industry, to the talent crisis with the sense of urgency that it demands. So first, I want to give a little bit of context around, who and what the transitions is. So for those of you who did attend our session last week, bear with the repetition for a few minutes, but you can see what our mission and the goal is here on the slide. But I did want to take a more personal slant to it. So who is the transitions? Yes, it is absolutely a handful of purpose-driven people who want to do good in this industry, and they had this idea. But honestly, our greatest hope is that it will include all of you, and that you will become the driving force in what we're doing here. The talent crisis is our industry's greatest current threat. But it's also our greatest, current opportunity, and it's a transformational opportunity. And it's going to take all of us, from all sides of the industry, all sectors, to really help the industry transform with this next generation of talent. So we invite you to be part of this journey and be part of the solution. In terms of what the transitions is, I really thought about, honestly, what it is not. It is not a single conversation. It's not a single presentation. It's not a single article. Our industry has been hearing and talking about the talent crisis for years now, and really it's been in somewhat of a one-off fashion, if you will. So what's really been lacking is sort of an arm-in-arm collective movement to address it. So one of the most tangible ways that we thought we could help individuals and help organizations is really, helping with creating a plan. So included with this session, with all the other sessions, will, obviously be copies of the PowerPoint slides, but we've also included a handout with session takeaways, resources, key questions you should be asking yourself as you're putting this plan together. And so our hope is that at the end of the entire webinar series, you'll have a great foundation for this transition plan, of all these materials that you've received and put together. So just, in terms of where those handouts are, if you look at the control panel widget, if you will, there's a little section called handouts, so you can, click on those, download them. Also, while you're there, there is a chat area. So, as you have questions as we're going along, please do put those in the chat box. Okay, so we do have a, create a plan curriculum, if you will. We have a lot of webinars and sessions coming up. And you can see that a lot of these are about, reimagining, various business practices in the industry. And we thought, before we, reimagine workers' compensation, before we reimagine our culture, it would, be good to first, pause, take a look at the study data, take stock of where we have been, see how we're currently positioned to address the talent crisis, so we really know where our jumping off point is. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the study, we are entering our 9th year of conducting this annual study. And really what we have found in our 9 years of working together with the industry is that we've got an extremely curious and an extremely engaged industry that really is very interested in doing better and in being better. And it's for those reasons that we've been able to build together the industry's largest survey of claims leadership and claims frontline staff. So specifically, you know, one of the most meaningful things we've been able to do is identify and quantify those specific practices that are really moving the needle for organizations and really separating the top performers from the lower performers. And I can tell you that the results show that those organizations who have invested more in talent practices and more in their culture, they are proving out to have better claims outcomes than those who have not. So today our conversation really is about this quote. You know, you can't improve what you don't measure. You know, we've been researching the talent crisis, you know, our industry's response since 2013. And, you know, and it's no longer that looming crisis that we've been talking about. You know, it's here, it's at our front door. And I will say that candidly that, you know, the study findings over the years, you know, has found it's been kind of like a Clint Eastwood movie. You know, there's been some good and there's been some bad and there's been a little ugly. So we're going to go over that good today. There's some things that are trending in the right direction, but we are going to take a real and a hard and an unsugar-coated look at some of the bad and a little ugly. So again, this webinar, it's not about wagging our fingers at those things. You know, we appreciate that our survey participants have shared, you know, some of their real challenges and their real pain points so that we as an industry know where we truly are and we know where to focus in order to get better. So with that, we are finally getting to our panel here. And they're going to give us a real assessment of you know, how we're doing as an industry. So I have asked our panelists to, you know, introduce themselves, and also considering that we are talking about industry generational shifts, as well as, you know, how we as leaders are elevating that next generation of talent. I've also asked them to share, you know, what generation are they from? How long they've been in workers' comp, and how many years they've been in leadership. So, Bill.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be here. I'm one of the baby boomers. I've been in the industry for 41 years. I've been in a leadership position for 33 years. I've been a risk manager at Safeway Albertsons for 15 years. Last 3 years, I was a senior fellow at the Sedgwick Institute. I received Risk Manager of the Year in 2014 from RIMS, and this last year I got the David DiPaolo Summa Cum Laude Award, which was quite gracious as well.
Great. And Jeanette.
Hi there, I'm Jeanette Ward, Chief Operating Officer at Texas Mutual. I am Gen X. I've been in the industry for 27 years, in workers' comp specifically, with the same company the whole time, and I've been in management for about 15 years.
Great. And Tom? Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
I knew there'd be technical difficulties. Thank you. Jeanette was quicker than I anticipated. That's why I wasn't quite ready. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Tom Weiss. I'm currently the Vice President of Claims with MEMIC in Portland, Maine. I would be considered a baby boomer. I have been in this industry for over 36 years, and I've been in a leadership position in the industry for over 34 years. I first started as a consultant for Cigna companies in Minneapolis when I was finishing law school. The first 10 years of my career were principally managing field claim offices for Cigna, either in the Chicago area and or in the New England area. I then spent a year doing risk management consultant work for the principal contractor managing the Nevada nuclear test site. And then I've spent the rest of my career principally in the role I've been in and am in currently with MEMIC, and that is Vice President of Claims started with Zurich, and then have moved around to some other companies until landing here in Portland, Maine.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. And then we've got Vicky, who we hope is on the phone. She's having an internet issue. It's 2021, so we're used to dealing with these things. Vicky, I hope you are on the phone.
I am on the phone, Rachel. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Vicky Kennedy, and I'm the Assistant Director for Insurance Services in Washington State. As one of the few remaining exclusive state funds, I'm responsible for claims management, employer accounts, self-insurance regulation, really all the elements of a workers' compensation system. Like Tom and Bill, I'm also a baby boomer. I've been in workers' comp. I'm now in the midst of my 50th year, and I've been in leadership positions for more than 20 of those years.
Great. Thanks, Vicky. So a little bit about our format today for the session. I'm calling it the hot seat. We've got some brave panelists here, and each of them will be giving a grade for various talent practices A through F. But they won't only be giving out grades, they are going to be giving solutions to help us with, to get better. I do want to mention that even though we are talking about claims talent here, most of these solutions are going to be transferable to other positions, other company types, with a little tweaking. So we have got a lot of stuff to cover today. Our panelists have agreed to be timed for their responses because we have so much to get through. They have chosen themselves 60 seconds. So we'll see how we do. We're having bets on who might get the most gongs. But they did make a very tough decision. They were deciding between the gong, the air horn, and in the end, they decided on, I want you to wait for it, let's see, a cowbell, more cowbell, in fact. So here we go. I've got my hammer ready to gong, folks. Get ready for the fire hose. We've got what, 3 boomers, a Gen Xer. They're ready to do some knowledge transfer. Here we go. So we split the session, really into 2 parts. We've got, our organizational investment in talent, as well as our organizational investment in culture. So, for this first section, we're sharing the scenario where, the CFO asks, what happens if we invest in developing our people and they leave us? And the CEO says, what happens if we don't and they stay? So I think it's just a helpful demonstration of how it really may require organizations and leadership to drastically reframe how they're thinking about investing in employees. So our first finding, how we are partnering with colleges, in terms of recruiting as well as training. So you can see in this finding, only around 20% of claims organizations are saying that they are working with colleges. It certainly hasn't got much better since 2014. I do want to mention quickly that you'll see that all the findings are starting with 2014, the 2014 study, instead of the 2013. And really that's because, we had a greater sample size in 2014 than we did in our first year out, so may bring a little bit more credibility there. And you'll also see that some years that, I'm not reporting any findings. That's because we did do focus group research a couple years instead of survey research. And then there's been some survey research years where, we didn't always ask the same questions. So we'll be providing, what we've got. So Jeanette, if we could get your grade on how we're doing here and your solution to help us get better.
Absolutely. So I think the numbers show that we probably can't give ourselves an A if only 17 to 20% think that we're doing a good job with college collaboration. So I'll give us a C or a D. But I do think the industry is better than it used to be. When I went to college over 30 years ago, I didn't know about insurance, I didn't know about risk management programs, and a lot of them didn't exist. But now we do have risk management programs. And at Texas Mutual, we do make a concerted efforts to collaborate with colleges in the cities where we have offices. We do fairly extensive collaboration, not just going to job fairs, that's a traditional thing, but we also sit on boards. I sit on an advisory committee for St. Mary's College, which is a great college in San Antonio. We also have our folks work on curriculum and actually teach at some of the risk management programs. Really gives us an opportunity to have a deeper, richer connection with students. And we offer to bring students on site to do tours and give presentations. So I think we've done a lot. I think those are some ideas that people can think about doing as they reach out to colleges. And then I think we can all do another step forward by reaching out to historically Black colleges and universities. And maybe we set up some risk management programs there as an industry to drive more diversity into the industry.
Great, thank you. So I'm having problems with my animation. My internet connection is now having issues. Folks, we might be on the honor system here, but Vicky, you're up next.
Thanks, Rachel. And just recognize that I just realized I'm at a real disadvantage because if your animation works, I have no idea how much time I have. So
well,
I'm going to probably win the. I will probably win the cowbell. Thank you. So I was a little hard on the grade for the industry on this one, and I only gave it a C. Now, first of all, I think if we're going to look to colleges, in some ways we have not necessarily looked for the right kind of people. We haven't necessarily looked at those interested in some of the social sciences, for example, where they can have the kind of soft skills or the kind of interest from more of a counseling perspective on helping workers. But in all honesty, I think we're barking up the wrong tree. I'm not convinced that the best place to look for our future claims folks is in the colleges. In Washington, we actually use an apprenticeship model, or what folks would call an earn while you learn. It's a 2-year approach, and it doesn't require any sort of a degree. And I think in a lot of ways it can provide an advantage when you think about the people that claims management's designed to help. People who come from many different backgrounds before they were injured, many of whom the cost of college is prohibitive. A lot of blue-collar workers, a lot of people that have been in the trades, for example, and understand the value of the concepts of earn while you learn. I just think we have to get away from limiting ourselves to thinking that a college degree is what's necessary. I will say that some of my best managers don't have college degrees, but have great credibility with staff and peers. So I would encourage us not to limit ourselves in our pool of people to join this industry.
Great. And Tom, you're up.
So one of the things I wanted to chat about is the use of predictive analytics in our recruiting processes out there. So real quick, to start the audience out, I'd like you to think about a candidate walking into an interview carrying a briefcase. Historically, organizations and interviewers have focused on what's in the briefcase, because what's in the briefcase is typically the individual's technical knowledge and skills. Things like, do they understand the principles of insurance? Do they understand work comp? Do they understand the statute and regs for the states they might be working? What is their claim handling experience, or underwriting, or loss control, or managed care? Those types of things. A little bit more recently, we've begun looking and interviewing for some of the softer skills, or competencies typically called, but this has been really focused on trying to discern whether or not the individuals have skills like customer service, problem solving, and decision making. What we've not done a good job is determining holistically whether or not the person carrying the briefcase, or I guess maybe in today's world, the backpack, is a good fit ultimately for success in the role and the whole accountabilities that come with that role for which they're interviewing. The use of a predictive analytics tool or assessment will help with that. And I think we can take an opportunity in the industry to utilize those more often. A good predictive analytics tool will help determine an individual's affinity for and likelihood of success in the role that you're hiring, pre-hire, and it'll lead to greater success in that role, greater longevity with your own organization, and therefore reducing your turnover and improving your ROI on things like your new training programs and developmental costs. What is a good predictive analytics tool? Well, there's a lot out there in the industry. One common one known by many is the Wonderlic tool. That's been used by the NFL Combine, but historically, the problem with these tools, they've only been used to predict cognitive success, which is really, again, what's in the briefcase. They haven't looked at the whole person. A quality predictive analytics tool will evaluate that whole person using both analytics and a comparative database to identify how closely that individual matches with the other personality profiles that have been successful in the role they're looking to fill. Further, it'll provide analysis on how to approach, coach, mentor, and develop those individuals who are a close but not necessarily a perfect match to the particular role, and identify focused and targeted areas for additional development. Now, as I mentioned, there's many tools out there. I've personally evaluated several of them in the industry. I cannot endorse any particular one on this survey, but if you want to contact me after the fact, I can share with you our experience in the tool that we're utilizing at Mimic.
Okay. All right, panel. So my animations aren't working that well. And I gave everyone a gimme on this slide. I'm breaking out the phone. I'm going to time, and it's going to get real. Okay. So let me, next, new hire trainings. So we can see that generally the industry is trending the right way here, but you can also see that we've still got some opportunity area. We're still showing that roughly 40% of organizations are not providing new hire training. Further, for those that are conducting new hire training, we ask them, okay, well, how many hours does that entail? So you'll see that most often the answers are centering in the 40 hours or less range. And then going further, we asked claims leaders, okay, what kind of ROI do you expect from the training, the new hire training that you're providing? And the most common answer was 3 to 4 years of employment. So, if you're using round numbers, that roughly equates to 1 year of employment for every 10 hours of training that is provided. So, finally, we did ask, is this new hire training preparing new claims staff to carry a caseload? And you can see that our claims leaders are definitely more bullish that this preparation does prepare, more bullish than the frontline claims staff. So, Jeanette, what do you think?
All right. Well, I give us a B in this area. I think we are doing better than we used to. I think back in the day, there was 1 or 2 companies that offered new hire training and everyone stole from them. But I see more people doing it now. I think everyone realizes it's a grow your own strategy is important. We do have, based on our college relationships, a structured claim training program, very structured, 3 months of on-site classroom and some hands-on training, and then a very robust onboarding once you get out into your office where you're going to be assigned. And we learned a lot of lessons how to do that wrong, which is throw them to the wolves and give them too many claims too soon, versus really having a structured opportunity for those folks to learn from the other professionals in the office. So I think it's been very successful. We're proud of that work, and and again, structured onboarding is probably the biggest key to that success.
Great. And Tom?
So like Jeanette, I'd give the industry a B in this area. I think we've done a lot of things. Hey, look back historically, I'll probably Bill and myself and Vicky, being the baby boomers, can remember the times where there were comprehensive schools of training that involved weeks or months away from the job to bring people up to speed and prepared for what the job would be. Then we went through that era of expense management, and we pretty much reduced training to utilization of other external resources like vendors, attorneys, et cetera, to provide our training to our individuals, and went away from the schools and the education. But recently we have gotten back to developing, implementing, and putting in place training programs, especially more focused on our new hires. The thing that stood out to me in the survey results, it's already 60 seconds?
15 seconds.
Is the fact that even though we are doing more training, you're gonna go on me, even though we're doing more training, the results show that our frontline folks do not feel as prepared for the job as they did even 3 or 4 years ago. So hearing the gong, I'll leave it with something we ought to look at is supplementing not only our classroom in-person training with technology, and specifically with learning management electronic tools to provide training at will to our employees who are looking for additional training.
Okay.
Seconds
Thank you,
goes.
Tom. Someone had to go first. All right, so now we're looking at provision of senior level training, ongoing skills training. And again, we are making some headway here. It particularly jumped up with frontline staff in 2019. And the thought is that they're probably including on-the-job training in their responses. So further, career paths, also making, good headway there. But you can still see that roughly 50% of organizations don't have a career path program. So that is certainly an opportunity area for the industry. And same with knowledge transfer programs. Again, headed in the right direction. But as of the last time we polled on this question in 2017, roughly 40% of claims organizations don't have a formal knowledge transfer program. So, Jeanette, I'm noticing you're up a lot first.
That's all right, I don't mind. Okay, so I give the industry.
Tom's right there.
So I give the industry a solid C on this, and I think our experience at Texas Mutual kind of mimics what I think you saw in those survey results. When we were doing employee engagement surveys, training development, and opportunities for advancement were among the lowest of what I will say were high scores anyway, but they were still some of the lowest. And what we realized is that we had all the pieces in place, but it's really important to have a deliberate, formalized program that's fully transparent and communicated well to employees. So we brought in a consultant, we talked to frontline employees, we talked to leaders, we developed the program, and we now have career paths with the learning paths that go with that. So there's self-service, there's transparency, and there's formal touch points and conversations. And I think that that's helped to drive just people understanding what's available to them, and will help improve this situation.
Great. And Tom.
Thank you. I give the industry a C grade in this area as well. I think we're doing okay, but can do significantly better. When you look at the statistics, 50% of our frontline staff are in the baby boomer category and will be leaving soon. So we need to make sure we tap those resources. And the question is, how do we do that? So first, I talk about the seasoned professionals who are not in a leadership role, either because they have a lack of affinity for leadership, lack of skill, lack of interest, for whatever reason they're not in there. How do we use these super technicians to help close the learning and the development gap we have? I think there's at least 2 key ways to do that. One is to consider calling upon some of those resources to serve as dedicated resources in your training and development team. They can be in that team in positions either as training content developers and or actual trainers. but it'll go a long way towards sharing the knowledge and skills they have with future generations, especially in those areas of the technical skills, which is the briefcase. The other is, I'll get it out there quick while 60 seconds goes fast. I'd consider utilizing them in an individualized mentor program. I'll leave this one quote and then leave it, because the next training session is on reimagining mentoring. All managers are required to be coaches, but not all managers have the skills to be mentors, and not all mentors are required to be managers or leaders. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Bill, you're up. Oh, you're on mute.
All right, I'd like to build a little bit on what Tom said. One of the interesting phenomena is when you try to promote good claims examiners to supervisors or managers, they've been micromanagers, and trying to get them to give up control is one of the hardest things to train people on, frankly. And there is no real track for a high skill level, but not necessarily supervisorial person. I think Tom was correct in using, training is one area that you can use them. And I think, though, you need to pay them correctly, and you need to also give them the opportunity so that people can have a separate high-level claims track, whether it's settlement specialist or whether it's something else within the organization.
Great. And Vicky.
I'm going to take a little bit different approach than the other speakers. I gave the grade a B-, but I want to talk a little bit about, I think, a somewhat unique approach that we're using in Washington. We have every 2 weeks in each of our claims units what we call Gemba walks. That's a lean term, meaning the place where value is created. What these every 2 week stand-ups allow, they take place within a unit. Leadership attends as a support to the staff, and they've created a safe place for people to talk about barriers to claims management or barriers to return to work that they're experiencing. And it's a way to get input from others and learn from their experiences, often resulting in a pretty quick development of a plan for resolving the claim or the barrier. And it's a way to transfer knowledge that respects some of the younger learning styles, where adults don't necessarily have these long attention spans. They learn in very quick spurts. They'll gather information in very small snippets of time. And we've had a lot of success.
All right, thanks, Vicky. Okay, so now we are getting into compensation, and we asked frontline staff, what would be the primary reason why they would leave their current job, and the most common answer was salary and benefits, which really doesn't make us any different than most other industries out there. But we did ask in 2020, claims leaders how often they are, benchmarking salary and benefits for their frontline claims staff, and you'll see that 38% of respondents answered, either unknown or none or not applicable. And the thought is if they don't know if it's happening, it probably isn't happening. And then the second most frequent answer is annually. So Bill, what's your grade in this area, and what's a solution?
Yeah, I gave the industry a B on this, but there are several issues that come up really quickly. The first is that for brand new claims adjusters, you have to keep their salaries up with the industry, because a one-year claims adjuster should be paid a lot more than a trainee claims adjuster, and most of the time the industry doesn't stay up with that piece of the puzzle. Secondarily, though, when you keep people on board for a long time, there's a tendency to give them a 1%, 2%, or 3% annual increase, and that doesn't necessarily keep up with the industry either. And so you're penalizing people for their loyalty to the company. So I think the HR department really has to be careful and thorough in what they do with regards to doing salary surveys and keeping the employees current. Otherwise, you're going to see a continued high level of turnover throughout the entire industry. Another outstanding issue is the question of overtime for claims adjusters. Some states have a very strict requirement concerning overtime.
Great, thanks, Bill. Okay, so now we get into benefits. So you'll see that we, obviously conducted a number of surveys before COVID, and you can see that, claims leaders, when asked what benefits they're most providing, the things that rise to the top are wellness programs, tuition reimbursement, and professional conference fee reimbursement. So, we also asked in 2019 the frontline staff, what are the benefits that you most value? And you can see that the benefits that claims organizations are most often providing are things that the frontline staff, sort of runs middle of the pack to last on the list here. So the things that they do most value is working from home, bonus and profit sharing, as well as, a 4-day work week or some other sort of flexible work arrangement. And, even you might go so far as to say, if we lump 1 and 3 together, overall, some sort of a flexible work option, may be valued more than monetary bonuses, frankly. So then COVID hit, and we asked claims leaders, all right, so what's going on now? So in 2020, they did say, 61% of claims leaders said that a portion of their frontline staff did work remotely before the pandemic. And then we asked them, well, what do you think is going to happen after the pandemic? And, almost 91% of them said, we do still see that we're going to have staff who are working from home. And moreover, 49% of them believe that over half of their workforce would continue to work from home. So I guess in sort of a silver lining moment, COVID has actually driven claims organizations to provide, the benefits that frontline staff most value. We also took a look at, how is remote work impacting productivity, morale, and team dynamics. So you can see in the productivity area that, 50% of claims leaders say, hey, we're as productive as we ever were, no change. 39% said it's getting better. Impact on morale, 39% said, morale's like it was before. 46% said it's gotten better. The impact on team dynamics is where, there's a little bit of cause for concern. So 45% say there's no change, 24% say it's gotten better, but you do see that 31% say that, it's actually negatively impacted those team dynamics, which, is definitely understandable considering that, a lot of claims staff learn their craft by working in close proximity to each other. But it's definitely an area that we do want to watch and solve for. So, Vicky, I think that you are up for your grade here.
I think I am. I really gave the industry a pretty good score on this. I gave them a grade of a B+, or gave us. And for the most part, COVID really forced us to do some things quickly that may have been on the horizon anyway, but we really had to adapt. I will say for our organization, within a week, we had less than 10% of our staff even coming into the office, but they were all setting themselves up to telework from home. But doing it during a pandemic really presents some unique challenges. For example, people are dealing with kids being homeschooled, young parents needing to also take care of or assist elderly family members. My impression is, I think this is borne out in a lot of the data, is that younger generations want flexibility. They want work-life balance. They're not the same as thinking of the three of us that are baby boomers on the panel. We were raised to view that more hours working equaled success, and our children just don't see it the same way. And the industry really needs to figure out how to become family first focused in the work environment. And COVID certainly gave us the opportunities to do this. So a couple of things that we've done outside of just standard, the teleworking itself, we have decided to allow customized schedules. For example, staff might want to split their shifts so that they can help school-age children online in between maybe 4 hours of doing their work, 4 hour segments, or perhaps shorten their Monday to Friday work times and work on a Saturday. We still have to consider our customer needs, but lots of things can be managed as staff share responsibilities for customers, for example. Another piece really relates to something we did pre-COVID, and we implemented 2 changes. One of them was pretty easy. We set up private lactation rooms for nursing mothers in the work environment. But the thing that was really,
sorry,
the thing that was really out of the box is what we call an Infants at Work program. So new parents bring babies to work with them for up to 3 days a week, and they have a teammate who might provide some support. This has given people a way to sometimes share husbands and wives that are both in the work, so they share savings on daycare, and we've even given them private parking spots.
Vicky, if we have time, we want to hear more about that at the end. Okay, so Tom, you're up.
Yeah, I give the industry a B+ in this area as well. I think there's been a lot of positives from the work at home that's come about as a result of COVID. But I've been asked to address here, what is the solution to team dynamics, collaboration, and culture in the work at home environment? And the answer is, I don't know what the solution is. But I do have some observations. First, I'd say take advantage of your virtual environment and platform. There's a lot of benefits from the virtual platforms we're utilizing. Things like it makes meetings easier to schedule. It puts all the participants on the same operating plane. You don't have 6 people in a conference room and 3 people on video that aren't being paid attention to. So everyone's on the same place. It makes it easier to share reference and discussion materials, and it's typically easier to manage your time that you have set aside for a meeting in the virtual environment. But what are some other things that we can do? One, I'd encourage that we use the virtual platform to facilitate more focused discussion around solutions. This time goes to, I swear I only get 30 seconds. Around solutions to the industry challenges due to remote. Also use it to bring in guest speakers that you don't have access to physically typically, but you can have access to virtually. And then finally, use it for some team building activities such as virtual happy hour, virtual game time, story time, etc. It'll build your team.
Great,
ding,
thanks, Tom. All right, so we're getting into our second area of the presentation, and it's the organizational investment and culture. And, I've included a few quotes here, but really the one that we're going to focus on is culture is not what you say, it's what you do. So let's see how we're doing. Advocacy model. So we first wanted to take a look at, really what is our cultural adoption of advocacy-based claims models in the industry. And given that young talent are so motivated, by purpose-driven work, it's been said that marrying young talent with a socially conscious model is, the perfect match. It's even been said by risk and insurance, maybe it's the holy grail of getting them into the industry, and I think that it's aptly said. So you'll see that nearly 1/3 of claims leaders, they do say that they are using an advocacy-based claims model, and you'll see that number drops somewhat significantly with the frontline staff. I will say there's been a lot of discussion around this finding, both from the Study Advisory Council as well as others in the industry, that it may be that frontline staff may not recognize the word advocacy. It may be that they're calling it something different in their organization, maybe a worker-centric model, a customer-centric model, maybe they've given it a proprietary name, we care model or something. So regardless of that, I will say that the findings in general certainly do show that there is some ground to make up with the advocacy model, the actual adoption of it, particularly considering that in the results, it has been shown that these models do produce better outcomes, for those organizations that are using them versus the ones that are not. So digging in further, we thought it would be good to show the audience, what do claims leaders and frontline staff think are some of the greatest impacts of an advocacy model on the claims profession. And you can see that a couple things rise to the top for both groups of people. One is that it impacts injured worker engagement. And the other place where they agree is that it really does transform the claims profession from adjuster to advocate. So Vicky, can you share your grade and a solution to get better at this?
I can. So I gave the overall industry a B, and I gave credit to some jurisdictions as an A-. When I think about workers' comp about 10 years ago, when Washington last experienced a push for allowing private insurance to write workers' comp, some of the data indicated that two of the most mistrusted industries were government and insurance. That tells me that rebranding was definitely needed. And I think Washington has taken the advocacy model to the next level using what we refer to as worker-centric. It's really acknowledging the available literature that comments on who controls the return to work. It's actually the worker who makes the decision. And the worker-centric model clears the path for them by eliminating delays, providing support, helping them through the complexity of our system and processes. We train claim managers on this approach that takes into account things like behavioral economics and nudging the worker and others through specifically designed sections. That's just one example. But as I'll quick comment on results, where we've used vocational professionals in coordination with the claim manager, we have increased return to work outcomes by more than 200%.
Awesome, Vicky. All right. Sorry, who do we have up next? We've got Jeanette.
All right, so I gave us a B- C+. I do think there's been a lot of positive movement on advocacy, and I kind of think it is table stakes in terms of making us an attractive industry for the millennials and the next generations that follow. But I do agree that probably a lot of companies like ours came up with a different name for it. So we don't use advocacy, we talk about mutual care, our own brand. And we developed it with our adjusters. And it's all about empathy. It's the same concept, helping navigate an injured worker through the process and setting proper expectations. We used to describe it as, imagine your 20-year-old daughter or your father or your brother experiences a comp claim for the first time, and they have no insurance experience. How do you take all the regulations which are necessary and help someone really understand what to expect? And I think it leads to incredible job satisfaction and better claim outcomes at the end of the day.
Thanks, Jeanette. Bill?
Thank you. I gave it a similar grade in terms of the B-. I think Jeanette did a great job of laying the groundwork, if you will. What I've run into is institutional resistance towards implementation. And there are ways to overcome the institutional resistance. I think what's already been talked about has been the provision of data, explaining what the job is. I think more importantly, though, what you have to do is identify success when you're doing it and celebrate that within the organization. Both getting the person back to work, the reduction in litigation, all the successes you can find, and then you can recognize the examiners for doing that. It creates a great way to overcome the resistance, if you will. There are also other ways to overcome the resistance, and one is to create greater resistance somewhere else. In other words, my experience is that if you try to say, okay, if you're going to do it the other way, then you have to come to me. Usually they'll go the way that you want them to go because they don't want to come to me.
Thanks, Bill. Okay. So soft skills. And I will say, panel, we've got 8 minutes left, so we are gonna motor here. You can see that Soft skills is definitely an important component of the advocacy model, effective communications with the injured worker. You can see that 40 to 45% of organizations, no soft skills training is taking place. Empathy, which is, been emphasized by the industry as being particularly important, that's only happening, in about a quarter of organizations. So, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, so I said earlier in our discussion that in the 1990s, our organization started to focus on competencies a little bit in their training, but they really focused on competencies like customer service, decision-making, negotiation skills, because they were easier to link to technical skills. They didn't spend a lot of time focusing on the person-related soft skills like listening, creativity, collaboration, and empathy. I think one of the industry challenges to the effective soft skill development has been actually our approach to it. I think historically our approach has been training and or developing on the what and how of the soft skill. In other words, what is negotiation and how do you do it? Versus looking at the why and when. We didn't bring forth that link to why we would use a particular soft skill in our job and in our daily activities, and when to utilize that. So I think there's an opportunity for the industry to link the why and when to the how and what in soft skill training and development. I also think that it's critical to have a developmental plan that's a collaboration between the formal training, the coaching, and the mentoring of the person as a whole.
Thank you, Tom. Vicky?
Yep, Rachel, I gave the industry a C+ here. And this is where I think that the term diversity, equity, and inclusion comes in. Being successful in the worker-centric model, for example, really requires respect and empathy for the worker and what they're experiencing. But I am a firm believer that people can't consistently demonstrate or provide that respect unless they experience it in the workplace from their peers and leadership. And that's where diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, are vital. It's not as simple as having a certain proportion of the workforce made up of people of color or from different cultures. It's about truly including them and their perspectives in policies, in hiring, and in conversations. Active listening, if the workplace culture lives it, people will learn to transfer that experience to their customers. Active listening, including them in goal planning and so on. And as I said at the beginning,
5
I
seconds.
think claims management overall benefits when those who can relate to people are injured.
Thanks, Vicky. Okay, so psychosocial issues. So, how our industry is addressing psychosocial issues is really a big part of, are we walking the walk? Are we embracing a worker-centric culture as an industry? And, it's particularly important when you consider that both claims leaders and frontline staff rank psychosocial issues as one of the top barriers to achieving a good claims outcome. So you can see here that 35% of frontline staff say, they don't get enough training around psychosocial risk factors and mental health issues. Further, we asked claims leaders in 2020, what are you doing in this area? 33% said they're not doing anything. And 33% said that they are increasing training as well as a few other things to a lesser extent. So, Bill, what do you think?
Thank you. Yeah, my grade was you get the grade coming up here? Yeah. I see mine. In terms of doing the psychosocial issues, at Safeway, we did an identification of what we call the at-risk employee. And one of the biggest, to build on what I've talked about in the last session, one of the biggest problems we had in implementing it was the fear of creating psych claims. And we had to spend a lot of energy trying to re-educate the staff on how the fact that this not only reduced litigation, but it ensured return to work, which was one of the major factors that was important for protecting the injured worker and faster recovery. So the early identification and intervention is a crucial part of the puzzle. You have to overcome the resistance because we've always done it this way, and you have to overcome the resistance because it's going to create a side claim. But by doing it, it makes a big difference, and it becomes then part of the new culture.
Thanks, Bill. Vicky?
Yep, I gave us a C+ on this one, Rachel. When I think of the worker-centric model, it provides us a way of helping identify potential psychosocial issues. And what we found is as barriers are discussed, the claims person can begin to recognize potential red flags and addressing some of the barriers. For example, a worker who fears return to work and whether he or she has employer support could be resolved before it develops into a psychosocial issue. But when the worker needs more than that, many jurisdictions, I think, are beginning to recognize that trying to avoid anything that starts with those 5 letters, PSYCH, only gets worse if it's not dealt with. We have currently a pilot of using master's level therapists in our system to provide behavioral health interventions, and we also use activity coaching, the Progressive Goal Attainment Program, as just a couple of approaches now available to help support workers.
Okay, so we're running a little short on time here, so we are going to skip the metrics section. Pardon me, okay. And we'll get into job meaningfulness. So we thought it'd be important to close out, you know, how are we doing in this area? You know, obviously it is an important indicator of the culture that we are creating in the workers' comp industry. And you'll see here that you know, 80% of the nearly 1,300 frontline staff that we polled in 2019 strongly agreed or somewhat agreed that their job is meaningful. Bill, your thoughts?
Absolutely, yes. I gave it a B grade, and a lot of this process has to do with how you define what the job is with the examiners. In other words, I always would talk about the fact that the examiner's job is to provide benefits, not to say no. I would always talk about the fact that their job is to resolve the conflicts between the customers of the employer, the injured worker, the doctor, the attorneys, to resolve those problems, if you will. And so a lot of the process, if you will, for making meaningfulness, again, is reiterating the importance of what they do, how they're taking care of people who really need it. And you know, one of my favorite quotes was, I said, I want you to bend over far enough backwards that you have a rug burn on your forehead, and then you're doing about right for and most of the examiners would buy into that because they could appreciate the fact that they're dealing with people who are in pain. It's a hard thing that they're going through, and they really need the help, and they can do that.
Thanks, Bill. Jeanette?
Yeah, so I give the industry a B as well. You know, I agree with Bill. We have to spend time just reiterating, you know, so we do it at town halls, we do it in our marketing materials, we do it at the colleges, and we speak to them about how important our industry is and what we do, which is help people. And so we started several years ago. I saw there was a question in the chat about this, sharing real life stories of injured workers. We did this with video campaigns, marketing and advertising, and then we use it for internal communications as well, injured worker success stories. And I can tell you that it's extremely powerful when you hear someone in their own words. It features the worker. Some of them have gone through something really tragic. The employer and the adjuster are all featured talking about what the claim meant, the process meant to them, and how it got them back to as much of a productive life as possible. When I play it at new employee orientation, people cry. It's powerful. And it's just good to remind people the good workers' comp story, not just the bad one.
Tom?
20 seconds or less. So the question is, what's the solution for creating meaningfulness and purposefulness in a work comp industry career? I personally come from the school of thought that organizations do not create meaningfulness and purposefulness for their employees. Rather, individuals bring and create meaningfulness and purposefulness for themselves. So simply put, I think it's hiring the right people for the right fit from the beginning, using predictive analytics to help you do that.
Awesome. Vicky.
Yep, pretty quick here. I gave an A-. Maybe I'm grading on the curve a bit, but I am a cupful kind of person. Don't get me wrong on the grade. I still think we have a long way to go, but I think meaningfulness of work can be achieved when staff see the results in improving the quality of life for workers and for their families, and frankly recognize that's also the best way to save money for employers, so it's a win-win. I think Jeanette was spot on. Collect and tell the positive stories. We have seen some where the claim manager knows they were part of a team, because workers' comp takes a village. That literally saves someone's life.
Yes, thanks, Vicky. Okay, so unfortunately, we don't have time for the Q&A. We'll take a look at your questions, look to get back to you via email. And just quickly, next steps, please sign up for our next webinar. It's going to be awesome. It's around reimagining mentorship. We are launching a mentor-mentee program for the entire industry where we're going to match up mentors with mentees, have a database, maybe a little match.com. So really excited to tell you about that. And you can see the registration link there on the slide, but also you'll be getting an email invite. In terms of other next steps, get involved. Like I said, our hope is that you will join this movement, and there are many ways that you can do that. Again, attend each webinar, use those handouts, follow us on our various mediums. And again, just want to thank our panelists, our amazing panelists, for being in the hot seat, dealing with those technical issues. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. Please join our movement. And thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.